theoretical or speculative discipline. And then, of course, to now look at it as a practical discipline. And the pastoral theology we are addressing tonight falls to that latter category of practical theology. Every other forms of theology you can talk about, they are basically theoretical, basically speculative. And they have issues, they discuss, and stuff like that. So practical theology is our focus, of which pastoral theology is a variant. And I'm going to be looking at that. Now, before we go into the definition of pastoral theology, I think we need to just look at our world today, the church in today's world. Because it is in the church, through the church, in the current world situation, that pastoral theology functions. And we want to see the relevance of pastoral theology even to the society in which we live. When we talk of the pastor's work, pastors operate in societies, and societies change over time. This is not what Nigeria used to be 50 years ago or 70 years ago. But see, the same message of the Bible is still relevant to situations that we are in today. But if a pastor does not know how to apply the teachings of the Bible, the doctrines of the Bible, and make it very practical in addressing contemporary situations, you will discover that it will be as if we are living in the past. Now, the church in today's world, briefly describe, what does the world look like today, generally? Number one thing I want to say is the issue of globalization and technological advancement manifesting in the way we live. Some few years down the road, you could count how many homes have telephones in Nigeria. But today, everybody is carrying it around all over the place. In fact, in the Western world, they are now referring to the age we live now as post-Christian era because of some of their contemporary way of looking at things, which more or less may be like a deviation from biblical patterns that we have known. And that, of course, is already affecting how they do pastoral theology in the Western world. But we thank God, in African society, for instance, we are not really describing our own experience as post-Christian yet, even though through globalization, we are also connected to all the things that are happening all over the world, and they are affecting us. Now, one point that is very real here is that many now today, they don't want to keep up to the standards of the Bible anymore. They want to live some kind of carefree life. And pastoral theology must address that. Carefree living. No longer holding to biblical standards. Each one is trying to create a set of new standards for themselves in the way we live. And I say this is particularly true because of our engagement with the external world as a fallout of globalization. Relationships are breaking down with the advent of social media. You see, even a couple in the same house, they get home, there is no talking together again. You are carrying your phone, the other person is carrying a phone, and then you're on social media until you go to bed. Relationships are breaking down before our very eyes, causing all kinds of rifts in families. A man is lured on social media to begin to make friends with imaginary people, and before you say Jack, his relationship with his wife is no longer cordial, and that's creating problem, and the pastor has to address that. Because eventually families are breaking down, and pastoral theology must address the situation of people in a concrete form. That's why this subject of this weekend is very important. We could see stress and distress globally, all over the place, in our current world. Role models, they are fast disappearing. People that we used to hold in high esteem in those days, where are many of them now? Even in church leadership, you could count how many people are still true to the biblical message of repent or perish. Many times the average preaching in church is how to make people feel good, how they could multiply money and bless and be blessed and be successful and what have you. That has been the focus in our age today. So that is the reason why we need to reflect on pastoral theology, because it's a dynamic thing. The world is not static, and therefore the way we do ministry, the way pastors do ministry must also change, reflecting what is going on in society. And that is particularly true because the church is considered to be the ground and the pillar of the truth. We must be able to look at what is going on in our contemporary society and correctly diagnose the problems and provide the right solutions. Therefore, by way of definition, what is pastoral theology? I want to cite, first of all, the definition supplied by a man respected in this field of pastoral theology by the name Thomas Oden. Thomas Oden has described pastoral theology in this way, and I want to just quote it briefly. He said, pastoral theology is that branch of Christian theology that deals with the office and functions of the pastor. It deals with the function, the office, and the functions of the pastor. That's why you see the word pastoral there. Pastor. Pastoral theology. It is theology because it treats of the consequence of God's self-disclosure in history, which is what theology is all about. What has God revealed about himself, about various issues? How do we understand them, and how are we interpreting them in our various lives? That's what theology is all about. And then, of course, it is pastoral because it deals with those consequences as they pertain to the traits, to the roles, to the task, and to the duties and work of the pastor. All the functions of the pastor put together, they are at the front burner for examination. How does a pastor do this? How does he do this? That, like Dr. Jaisimi already spoke to us about, in the area of Christian education, evangelism, and pastoral care, and all of those things that are very concrete stuff. It's not just mere speculation. How do you speculate about pastoral care? Of course, that is not to say that pastoral theology does not have anything to do with reflection or with theoretical stuff, because we have to reflect on the way we do ministry, but it is much more connected to how we do ministry in terms of meeting the needs of people. That's what pastoral theology is focusing upon. So the work of the pastor, the way it has been ordained by God, as we understand it through scriptures, and how it has been interpreted in the evangelical world over the years. And of course, subject to review, just like I said, based on prevailing circumstances. Many years ago, it was a taboo, clearly a taboo, for two men to stand before an altar and they said they are getting married. What? One has bear, the other one has bear, and both of them are getting, you don't know which one is the husband, you don't know which one is the wife. And then you still see people that are called ordained ministers who are joining the two of them together. Even in the Western world today, if you refuse to join them together, they can sue you as a minister because you have been licensed as a minister, and they can say they withdraw your license because you are not willing to join two men together, which is contrary to biblical standards. That's why we need to review the way we do ministry again and again, based on prevailing circumstances. In Africa, for instance, how do we respond to issues like that? Even though we are not there yet in terms of, we having so much of very highlighted examples like that of two men getting married, but you can see all kinds of things that are happening. So, in a sense, pastoral theology has its own theoretical aspect because we develop consistent thinking about how we are doing ministry through our understanding of the scripture and the tradition that has been laid down over the years. But it is also a practical discipline because it is concerned with implementing concrete pastoral tasks rather than merely defining them. We are not just defining pastoral care or we are defining evangelism. It is doing the thing, or we are defining church planting. Thank God for whatever definition we have. It is the actual planting of churches that pastoral theology is concerned with because we are about meeting needs of people. Having said that, I want to say that all branches of theology, whether practical, whether speculative, in all its various forms, historical theology, dogmatic, systematic, all branches of theology altogether, whether theoretical or practical, they pursue in one way or another to make priests, pastors, and others in pastoral role to become the ministers of Christ and the dispensers of the mysteries of God indeed. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1. I think that scripture is very relevant. So it is not just educating ministers for the fun of education. It is focusing on making the ministers of God true dispensers and communicators of the mysteries of God. That is what theology seeks to achieve generally. So whatever we are studying about theology, it is to make the man of God to be thoroughly furnished to perform the task that we have been given. Okay? In 1 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 1, it says, let a man so account of us as of the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. So we are given the mysteries of God as stewards. And we must be firm and understanding to be able to do that correctly, even in the midst of the challenges of the world in which we find ourselves. The church today is obviously experiencing identity crisis. I don't know if you agree with me, because a lot of times you hear some of the stories about happenings in the church, even pastors who are supposed to be leaders of the church, because we are studying pastoral theology here. Pastors who are the leaders of the church, you find them in some questionable behavior, like fraud, like sexual immorality, and stuff like that, that the world is asking questions. That, look, what's the difference? Pastors are no longer enjoying the kind of respect they used to respect before. Some years down the road, if you call yourself a pastor in some places now, they will look at you twice. Particularly when you are traveling abroad and you are presenting yourself as a minister of God. Because they have seen all kinds of things. Pastors who have attempted to escape the country with cocaine in their so-called Bibles packaged there. Things like that. Well, we have identity crisis. What then should we believe? How should we then run ministry today in our present situation and circumstances that is fitting for the 21st century? That is the concern of pastoral theology. So I've given us a kind of professional definition given to us by Thomas Oden, but let me attempt a second one that I think is a little simpler, which of course is still saying the same thing in different ways. This one says pastoral theology can be defined simply as a practical theological discipline which focuses on the ministry or care of souls. I'm interested in that because it's particularly addressing reaching out to people. Focuses on the ministry or care of souls. In other words, it is concerned with ministering to people with the ultimate end of saving souls and discipling them to maximize their potentials on earth and make heaven at last. That's the way I've coined some of these words together. The care of souls. So when we say we are in ministry, what are we in ministry to do? Ministry in one word is service. We all know that. It's service. So nobody can say he's in ministry who is not reaching people. Because my definition of ministry says, ministry is simply the process by which God reaches out to people through chosen people. That's ministry. Because we are getting to the issue of call very soon. Ministry is God reaching people through chosen people. That's ministry. So any man who is not reaching people is not in ministry. Ministry is not a theoretical field where you are speculating and you are speculating. It's a place after you have reflected on ministry, you go out to the trenches and put your hands in the mud and actually minister to the needs of people. That is what pastoral theology is about. It's about reaching people for God. Now, why is there a need for pastoral theology? Let me ask that question. Why is there a need for pastoral theology? Why is it necessary? Why is it needful? And my response to that simply is that the need for pastoral theology is derived from the natural human need for God. There's a kind of hunger in the hearts of men for God. And they need direction. They need the response of God to the issues and questions of their lives. That is what necessitates the need for us to understand pastoral theology, particularly within the context of the church. Whenever and wherever people hunger and thirst for God, they also do hunger and thirst for someone to lead them to God. When they are looking for God, what are they looking for? Various issues. Some of them is to supply their needs. That's what they need. And pastors are put in position to speak on behalf of God, to speak into their lives what they are looking for, what they are trusting God for. So to meet their needs, pastors they are there to act on behalf of God. Some need healing. Pastors are there to minister healing in the name of the Lord, based on the fact that healing is part of redemption package, and ministers of God are there to reach out to the people, those who need healing. Some of them, they need a miracle. A woman is married for 5 years, for 10 years, struggling with one demonic affliction or the other, or they say, well, it's a challenge in your family, in your lineage, and whatever. And God is saying, no. At the beginning, it was not so. That's why pastors are in place. To connect with the grace of God, to connect with the power of God, to minister to such people, so that a miracle can take place. Even women who have been found without wombs, they have received their children because of a miraculous encounter with a man who is connected with God, and God is reaching people like that through them. Some are looking for God because they want to worship Him. They just want to worship Him. I was thinking of sharing this, that there are 3 major quests of humanity. There are 3 major things human beings long for. Major quests of life. Number 1 is the quest for transcendence. That's what theologians call it. Transcendence. In other words, they want to experience reality beyond the physical. In the heart of every human being, there is a God-shaped vacuum that must be filled only by God. Nothing else can fill it. So people who long to connect with God because they want to, they want to be at His level. They want to come to fellowship with Him. There's this hunger and passion for worship in their hearts. And that is challenging the quality of our worship in church. Because when people come to church, they want to experience God. There's a difference between worship and entertainment. Or people singing, just to excite people. And when they are worshiping, to bring people from where they are to experience the majesty of God. So people seek God to experience quality worship because they want to connect with divinity. That's the quest of man for transcendence. The second one is the quest for significance. People come to this earth, they want to achieve something. They want to make their life to be worthwhile, that they have not wasted their lives. So you see the hunger for achievement. People are pursuing this and pursuing that so that they can be fulfilled. We want to have education. We want to do one business or the other and then sit back and say, yes, I think I've lived a good life because I have done something significant with my life. That's another quest of mankind. And that's why the church is there. The church is supposed to be able to minister to these needs in the lives of men. Because God is responding to those quests. The quest for transcendence, the quest for significance, and then the third one is the quest for community. The quest for community. People want to have fellowship with some other people. A solo individual that is hanging around in one mountain or the other is not living according to his essence. Because human beings, we are like gregarious animals. We are supposed to be in communes. We are supposed to be relating with one another. So that's our desire for fellowship. And people are hungry for that. That's why somebody who gets to the age of puberty is desiring to be married. And pastors are there to speak into their lives, to ask them questions, to counsel those who are bringing suitors, and help them and counsel them to prepare them for marriage and all of that. Because it's a major quest of mankind. Desire for fellowship. Desire to be loved and to love in return. So pastors, we need to understand these things, that this is the situation with mankind, and we must be able to do our ministry in such a way that we are addressing those needs in the lives of men. They are encountering God, and they are relating with Him. Even though God is transcendent, God can also be immanent, in that the glory can come down so that they can touch God even though they can't see Him. Touch Him in their spirits. Touch Him in the worship that is qualitative, and bringing them into the realm of God. And then we can teach them the truth of the Word of God about how to achieve your life's purpose. So that, because some of them, under the second point of significance, many of them run around helter-skelter looking for solutions where the solution does not exist. In fact, some of them, they go to the extreme of trying things that are detrimental to their soul. People want to be successful, they want to make money, and then they go into some negative stuff. Yahoo, and all of those things. And somebody can be in church and is still doing Yahoo, because he wants to live a significant life. But then he's breaking the law of God putting his hands into ungodliness and to iniquity, and the church must respond to that. All of these things are prevalent in our society today. So pastoral theology is supposed to address prevailing circumstances in the lives of people. As we move on, as society changes, as there are changes in our experiences, pastors must respond to prevailing situations and circumstances. Now, one area that I think is major today, which I don't see the church really standing up against, is this impact of social media on our psyche. In my position as a chaplain of PCU, I've seen things. I've seen some of my students struggle with all kinds of stuff, particularly because of this exposure to social media and what have you. Some of them are trying pornography. That's the truth. It's there all over the place. And we need to let them know, look, because technology has made some of these things available for us, the negative aspect of it, you have to walk away from them if you don't want to jeopardize your future and self-destruct. Is the church addressing issues like that? A lot of them are struggling. Their minds are no longer focusing on Bible. I was challenging a lot of our youth that, look, the youth of today, you hardly can engage literature and sit down and read stuff. That's what made the giants that we are celebrating today. They are readers. They settle down to read, to study. But the youth of today, are they interested in reading? No. They can spend hours browsing WhatsApp, Facebook, and what have you. These are the realities of today. And if as a pastor, you are not on WhatsApp, you are not on Facebook, how do you address some of those issues? You don't even know what they do there. And that's why we are saying that pastoral theology is dynamic. You need to be able to respond to the issues of the now. How can we save our youth from self-destruction? By helping them to engage social media, but in a very positive way. Those are the issues. Some, of course, they are seeking God for a deeper knowledge of God. That's why the need for pastoral theology is there. Some of them, they need a clear word of direction for their lives. A specific word of direction as to what they are supposed to be doing in certain areas or the other. So this is describing, in general, what pastoral theology is all about. Now, let me quickly talk about the goal of pastoral theology. What is it aiming at? What is it trying to accomplish? The goal of pastoral theology can be described as effective pastoral ministry in theory and practice. In other words, we want to make sure that men of God who are standing behind the pulpit and ministering to people, they are effective in their assignment, in the pastoral ministry work, both in their understanding of what it is and in actually doing it, in the theory and the practice. Pastoral theology aims at seeking out the best way possible to render service to those who need God, whether it is in teaching, in preaching, in administration, in worship, singing, praying, counseling, in sacramental life or spiritual life. This is it. We are responding to the need of people. Their felt needs that are there. And so pastoral theology trains the minister to read the signs of the times and apply the scriptures and theology to the practice of ministry. That's it. A pastor is supposed to be able to read the times, know what is going on, and how do we respond to it. For many years, in seminary, when I was in the seminary in Lagos, I taught a course on church and society. And one of the things I was telling them, that if you are a pastor, you don't need to read the Bible alone. Bible is not the only thing you read. Bible in one hand, newspaper on the other hand. Church and society. The Bible is representing the mind of God and all that the church is doing, taken from the Bible, and the left hand with which you are holding the newspaper is telling you about the goings on in the life of society. What's going on in society? What is happening? If you're a minister of God and you are not listening to news on radio, you don't watch, documentaries about what is going on in your country. All you are doing is you are reading the Bible and you are very, very sincere in your room. You are fasting and you are praying and you go out, you are ministering to people. Many times you are not hitting where they are pinching. You are not touching them where it is hurting. Because you are totally oblivious of what is going on in their surroundings, what they are going on, what they are experiencing on a daily basis in the real world of society. You cannot be a pastor who is absent from society and you are ministering to that society. What message do you have? The youths that are struggling with all kinds of things in their lives, and you are not stepping up there to know what's going on, and you can minister to that, you can't reach them. You can't. If you don't know what things are people struggling with, how do you minister to those things? So this is food for thought as far as pastoral theology is concerned. Now let me begin to describe a little bit more about the ministry leading us to the call. Because the call to ministry is something very, very important and very powerful in terms of pastors engaging people in ministry. A sense of call.